الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين حمدا كثيرا طيبا مباركا فيه اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد أما بعد. Right, alhamdulillah, we are back for another masterclass in our week 2 of our diet program. In these series of masterclasses, before we begin our formal studies, we are trying to make sure that we are set properly for our journey ahead. We have made the right preparations because the journey requires from us that we build robust systems in our lives so that we don't detrack, we don't waste time, so we are productive, inshallah. Secondly, with regards to two things that you're going to be mainly indulge yourselves in. One, language learning, i.e. Arabic, its mastery, literature, Islamic texts and all that, bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. And secondly, the Quran, right? These are the two things that we are going to be studying or sort of carrying on in parallel, inshallah. Yesterday we looked at how to learn languages, and more specifically how to master the Arabic language, inshallah. We gave some principles, some tools for us to start our journey today, bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. Right, so keeping that in mind, we're going to jump into today's masterclass, and then we'll start the next section, inshallah, where we'll start learning Arabic, bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. Right, so inshallah we'll be focusing on how to memorize the Quran. Of course, everyone, inshallah, already has heard many lectures before in their lives as to how memorizing the Quran is important, why it's important, and what the ulama have said, for example, about it. Just to briefly mention some of those things, we know that the Quran is kalamullah. It's a speech of Allah Azza wa Jal. And because it's a speech of Allah Azza wa Jal, it holds a huge importance in the lives and the hearts and the beings of Muslims, right? To the point that the Quran will remain relevant even after we're dead, even after the resurrection happens, even when we're in Jannah, right? So this is the book of Allah. This is a book that is to last for the end of the times and beyond that, right? And this is the speech of Allah. So because of this virtue, it is also the foundation of our law, Sharia, right? So memorizing the Quran is important if you want to become an alim, if you want to become a faqih, because when you don't memorize the Quran, you don't have the adillah, the evidences of the Quran and Sunnah ever present in your mind. So there's no tahdir of the evidences. So you're not as strong in making istidlal, in making judgments when it comes to issues and questions and issues of dispute or issues of studies, tafsir, whatever the case may be. When you haven't memorized the Quran, your judgment is going to lack, and your overall performance and productivity in this journey of yours in seeking knowledge is going to suffer, right? So we want to memorize the Quran. Secondly, the Quran is the mother of all sciences, of all knowledge, right? So if you haven't memorized the Quran, you have been removed, you've been deprived rather of this huge source, which is the mother reference of all knowledge. Secondly, in terms of mastery of the Arabic language, Quran is the epitome of the Arabic language. So when you memorize the Quran, you also internalize the structures of the Quran, right? And this becomes a form of evidence for you later on when you indulge in advanced Arabic studies, right? Subhanallah, because Quran is the most beautiful form of Arabic, the most pristine form of Arabic. The Quran is used as a form of evidence in the books of grammar, right? In the books of sarf, morphology, in the books of rhetoric, balagha, right? Eloquence, and so on and so forth. So if you don't memorize the Quran, your perfection of Arabic, your mastery of Arabic is going to suffer, and so on and so forth. There's many reasons, right? You're going to be spiritually deprived. The Quran is the ruh of the ummah. You're going to be deprived of the soul. So memorizing the Quran and being connected to the Quran is very important for us as Muslims. طيب. So that is the why that we should memorize the Quran. However, because of, inshallah, this being common knowledge, I want to spend more time on how to memorize the Quran, inshallah, and we will just keep this first session of today's classes to focus just on how to memorize the Quran. So let's jump into this, inshallah. Let's look at some principles that surround the memorization of the Quran, inshallah. Right, so the first thing we want to talk about are the foundations of your hifz. And not just hifz, but your life as a Muslim. Right? Your life as a Muslim. If you don't have these two foundations, rather three foundations, if you look at it in three into its separate components, then your spiritual life is going to suffer as a Muslim. And more so if you're a talib al-ilm, you're going to have shayateen attacking you from all directions, and not just basic entry-level shayateen, the jarjila, right? The jals, the biggest, the ifrit of them are the ones who are on your case. They want to derail you from your path. So if you leave these two things, they are your essential fortresses, right? The foundations, that will keep you on track, inshallah. So the first is the khatmas, right? We've talked about this in our previous classes with some of the students. I'll repeat this again. A student of knowledge, and less so for any Muslim needs to do this, but a student of knowledge especially, they need to have the constant khatmas of the Quran. And khatma in Arabic means completion. So you need to be reading the Quran, looking at the Mus'haf. So you just a general read of the Quran once a month, ideally. And then you should be listening to the whole Quran, right? Once a month, right? So you complete the Quran like that every month, right? So you read the Quran and you listen to the whole, entire Quran. So these khatmas need to happen. If you don't do this, then your connection with the Quran is weak. It's an indication, right? It's an indicator of how connected you are to the Quran, right? So the khatma of the Quran is very important. No matter what happens to you in your life, these khatmas should not be replaced, right? One of the readings should be carried on. For example, sometimes emergency strikes and you don't have the time to listen properly, perhaps, or perhaps read. You can skip one of the khatmas but then make up for it the next day, right? But you have to continue with at least some of the khatmas, a portion of the khatma, at least a component of the khatma every single day, right? So you aim to finish the Quran once a month, inshallah, by reading and listening. Now, you could combine the two. You could listen and read at the same time. This could potentially save you time. But because these are two separate skills, ideally, from my own experience, I recommend, and I personally feel that these two should be done separately. Reading the Quran, like reading a juz a day, for example, right? It's 20 pages. If you just divide 4 pages with between the salahs, that's a juz a day basically, right? Or 5 pages in 4 salahs, that's a juz, right? So you can sort of see how well that that division works for you. And then the khatma of the Quran, you can listen to any one of the accepted and authentic qurra of the last century, like Sheikh Husari and Sheikh al-Minshawi. These two I recommend highly. Others not so much, but there are definitely some good qurra like Abdul Basit, Hafidhullah, Rahimahullah, and others. Right, so listen to Sheikh Minshawi and Sheikh Husari. These are the priority. If you prefer some of the modern ones, then Sheikh al-Afasi is also someone who is good. But Sheikh Sudais and others, they're not very, very strong. Sheikh Shuraim is also very good, right? From the modern ones. So these two, Sheikh Shuraim and Sheikh al-Afasi, these two from the modern Hufad, the Qurra, and then Sheikh al-Minshawi and Sheikh Husari from the last century. So listen to their Quran. And what we can do is to save a bit of time is to slightly put the recording of the playback of the Quran to 1.25, 1.5. If you go beyond 1.5, normally it distorts the tajweed, right? But between 1.2 and 1.5, the tajweed of the Quran it remains intact, right? So you should aim for these two foundations initially. The second component, so the first is the khatma. The second component is your qiyam, right? You should be praying your witr every single night. This is something that you should not leave off, even if you're traveling, even if you're, subhanAllah, The ulama, they mention this all the time, right? And it's filled in, these words are filled in the books. They say that something that is normally preferred, mustahab in the religion of Allah Azza wa Jal, for normally speaking, for طلاب العلم, it is on the daraja of obligation, right? What we mean by that is, as Shaykh, Imam Ahmed, for example, a lot of things that others would find flexibility in, or take some sort of lenience in, he would not do so, right? He would even pray qiyam when he was traveling, and so on and so forth. So these are things that, if you don't do as a talib al-ilm, there's nothing to distinguish you from the people. The sunan, the extra nawafil, voluntary acts of worship, right? They are the guardians of the fara'id, right? As is the principle in usul al-fiqh, right? The sunan, they are the guardians of the wajibat. They protect the wajibat, and they're the khuddam of the wajibat. They serve the wajibat. If you leave of the voluntary actions, your wajibat, your obligations are going to suffer, right? So make sure you keep these two foundations, inshallah, okay? So the khatmas, 1 juz a day, reading and listening. You can combine the two, as I've said. And then every single night, you should be praying some qiyam. Initially, to get into the habit of qiyam, just read a page by looking at the mushaf, right? If you can. Or if you have memorized some Quran, just take that, inshallah, and stand with it in the night. Over time, when you memorize the Quran, when you start memorizing the Quran, your qiyam will majorly focus on your current hifz, the current juz that you're memorizing. You'll just read that in your entire juz, or half a juz, or however much you have done of that juz in the witr, the salah, right? And the witr can be as little as 1 or 3 or 5 or 7 or 9 or 11, or as much as 13, as the ulama have said. Okay, so that's the foundation. If you are serious about this journey, you want to seek knowledge properly, you have to make sure that these foundations remain intact, right? You cannot leave your khatmas, and you cannot leave your qiyam. These two things, right? And this is a reminder for myself first and foremost, and then yourselves, okay, inshallah, and for anyone who's listening. So these are the foundations. Now, secondly, let's quickly jump into different ways to memorize the Quran, and then we'll boil down to all of that into the 3 fortresses of hifz. Okay, right. So you have generally 2 ways to memorize the Quran in the Muslim world at the moment. Right, it has been like this, generally speaking. Right. So there is the African method, generally. Generally speaking, and then there is the non-African method, essentially. The non-African method, the Ajami method, or the normal Arab method, is essentially to leave things to the intelligence of the student a bit, and then you make the student memorize as well as he can, naturally, and then you give them a small target of perfection, and then you move on to the new hifz, the recent hifz, and the old hifz. So it's not as intensive. What you're aiming to do is you're aiming to strengthen the Quran over a long period of time, like over a longer time, right? And in fact, what they do is they, like, for example, in Saudi, the ulama have written books on the memorization method in the Saudi, and this is roughly reflective of how it happens in Pakistan, how it happens elsewhere in the non-Arab world and the Arab world, right? Excluding Africa. So I'm using the word Africa to mean the North African countries and the West African countries, right? So the way it's memorized in all the way from Libya, so excluding Egypt. So starting from Libya all the way to Morocco, and then Mauritania and Senegal, and so on and so forth. So in Saudi, what they do is they will leave this the new memorization to the memory of the student. Okay. Wa alaikum assalam wa barakatuh. Right. So they would leave the memory, the new memorization to the ability of the student. So they say memorize half a page, a few lines, a page, but they put a cap on 2 pages. They say don't go beyond 2 pages, otherwise it'll be a bit difficult for you. However, they don't restrict it. Like if a student wants to memorize a bit faster, I know students who memorize the Quran in Haram from Medina, and they used to memorize some 4 to 5 and even half a juz a day as well at some points. Because the focus is on the natural ability of the student, and then some corrective or some let's say corrective measures to make sure he doesn't lose his hifz over the period, and then there is the strengthening phase later on. I'll explain this in a second, right? So that's the first thing. The method of memorization in Saudi would focus on the natural ability of the student, of however much he wants to memorize and recite to the teacher. It could be from a few lines, half a page, to a page, and then to 2 pages, and then for some students, advanced students who are later, who are at a later stage in their hifz journey, to memorize, 5 or half a juz and so on and so forth. This is exactly the same in Pakistan and other non-Arab and non-African countries. Very similar. Right, so that's the new hifz. In Morocco and the North African and West African countries, it's the opposite. They focus on not your natural ability. You might be a very strong memorizer, right? But they don't want to leave things to chance and leave things to nature. What they want to do is they want to make sure that everyone memorizes properly, right? So the way they target that is by 2 things: the size of the portion that you're memorizing, and the amount of repetitions you give it to perfect the memorization. In the Saudi or the the Arab and Ajami part of the world, they don't focus on the amount of repetitions as much, right? In Saudi, they do give some importance to it. Like, they say once you memorize, repeat it like 10 times, 20 times, and so on and so forth. But not as much. And as I said, it's mostly left to the ability of the student, because the teacher can't really check for every student if they've memorized, if they've used this method or not. But in Mauritania, it's a common practice that a student they don't take more than a few lines to half a page, and very advanced students to take half a page, a full page. Very rarely, like it's at later advanced stages. But they would recite that portion. They would write it down. They would hear it, and they would write it down on their lawha, on their tablets, on the wooden tablets, and then they would repeat it, close to 300 times on their first reading. And then we read it again 150 times the next day, and then 100 times, and so on and so forth. So it's very slow, and it's very, very demanding in terms of repetition. It's rote learning, right? At its max, at its peak. So one thing that this method ensures is that, nothing is left to chance. Nothing is left to the ability. So ability can vary from season to season, from month to month, from day to day. A student may feel, he can memorize 10 pages a day, and the next day he doesn't feel like memorizing a half page. So this mechanism of repetitions, extreme repetitions, makes sure that a student, they don't leave anything to chance. It's a discipline they stick to, and they stick to it until the end of their journey of talab al-ilm. Of course, the memorization phases of it. Now, the Mauritanians, they would normally memorize the Quran in 4 to 5 years, right? It's very, very common for them to memorize the Quran in 4 to 5 years, because they do it slowly. They do it with this intense repetitions. So it's very customary of them to take that time, and it's very intense. It's very demanding on the brain, because the brain gets tired. So it's also very good training for the brain in terms of how to sit for long periods of time to remain focused on repetitions. However, there is a cache where are those repetitions, is there a point when repetitions become unnecessary or become a bit more superfluous, or, where you could leave some repetitions, and then this is where the modern science of interleaving comes in, and spaced repetition comes in, and we'll discuss that inshallah in a second, right? So that's the first principle, the difference, the difference between the two methods, right? So the importance that's given to the amount of repetitions. Secondly, the Arab methodology, or the African and non-African methodology. So non-African methodology also aims to memorize the Quran to perfection. Of course, the idea of perfection and not forgetting is key to both of the methods. However, the non-African methodology demands from the students that because they have not done the reps initially, right? They do it over a long period of time. So once they've memorized the Quran, they then do a perfection phase of a year or 2 years, right? But the Mauritanians don't have to go through that phase because they've been doing that over, as they've been memorizing the Quran. In any case, the point being that whether you do 300 repetitions or 200 repetitions or 150 or even 10 or 20, the point is that the student, and this is the crux of it, the best way to combine between the two methodologies is to give some importance to repetitions, and to remove the idea of leaving everything to the natural ability of the student. That's the best approach. Like you need to take some of those elements from the Mauritanian method and leave some of the extraneous method, and adopt the middle path, right? So not everyone has the luxury of doing 300, 400 repetitions. Initially, when I first started, I was very inspired by this method. I mean, I was 17, 18, 19 years old, and I remember doing like 150, 200 repetitions of one, and then I think I even did like 300 of a page, right? But it would take me all day. And then if you have other tasks to do and obligations, work, and it will be very difficult. So doing 300 repetitions, 400 repetitions, first of all, is not practical. And secondly, scientifically speaking, it can be avoided. Right? You can do it over, like, so instead of doing repetitions, all of those repetitions in one go, so what they will call cramming, you can, if you spread it over a period of time, it is far more effective for your mind. Right? Because the Mauritanians, they do this initial, drilling, and then they continue with the Quran for the rest of their lives, right? That effect is sort of is not shown. Like everyone thinks, it's the memory effect that they have, the strength that they show in the memorization and recall. It's to do with the initial reps, but science says that it's not because of the initial reps, right? Yes, the initial reps may help form better memories initially. Right? But what really gives strength of the Quran to the Quran is if you stick with the Quran for a long period of time. And I can testify to this because I've talked about this topic to many hufad, many ulama of the Mauritanian region and the Moroccan ulama, right? And a lot of them, they say that if you don't revise, you're going to forget, right? So everything comes down to a long-term plan. Everything comes down to how consistent you are with your Quran over a long period of time. So it's not to do with the initial amount of reps that you do with the Quran, with your daily portions. Okay. So now, the best way to combine between the two is, as I've said, is to take the Mauritanian principles of repetitions and small portion, and then take the element of the Arab manhajiyya, is to spread it over a long period of time with regular tests, right, by the teacher, and regular, revision between the partners, and to pay attention to the current juz that you're memorizing more so than the old juz, because old juz is something that is already very, very solid, and you can, be a bit more flexible with it. In any case, inshallah, I hope the different ways of memorization a bit, you have a bit of an overview of how the two methods are different, right? So the primary thing is the amount of repetition and the amount of portion, right? Mauritanians go to an extreme, and the Arab methodology is, in my opinion, a bit more closer to i'tidal, the middle path, right, which is ideal. And the only thing that we need, the real thing that makes or breaks the hifz is your consistency with the Quran over a long period of time. That's the main crux of it, right? But we do want to take the principles of repetition and portion control from the Mauritanians, right? And let's jump into the three fortresses of hifz. So this, whenever you're memorizing anything, not just the Quran, even mutun, and even books of fiqh or hadith, whatever you're memorizing, right? Even your normal subjects like history or maths or whatever. There's always new study, there's recent study, and there's old study, right? Likewise, in Hifz, you have the new memorization, the recent memorization, and the old memorization. The new memorization is what you do every day, the new portion that you have to memorize that you haven't memorized yet. Then you have the recent memorization, the current juz that you're working on, that you're memorizing at the moment. And the old memorization is everything else that you've memorized in the past. Okay? So these three fortresses, the first two are the most important. If you can really perfect your lesson on the first day, you become really confident with it. It flows off your tongue without even thinking. That's the standard that we are aiming for. That's the litmus test for your hifz quality. And of course, the Mauritanians, they automatically achieve it because, once you repeat something 100, 200, 300 times, even like 50 times, it flows off your tongue. You become very fluent in saying it, inshallah, right? So the quality of your the standard is essentially, if it flows off your tongue and you can say it without thinking, it's probably a very good quality of hifz, right? Then your recent memorization is the second most important thing, which is going to make or break your hifz. Okay, this is your current juz. If you can master this, inshallah, at this stage, then the old memorization, which is essentially a revision of everything that you've memorized before, it will become so much easier. You won't even have to think about exerting yourself. It will just come naturally. You'll just have to dedicate a time to it in the day, and then just start reading. And wallahi, the old memorization is super easy, and it comes so naturally if you've strengthened your current juz, right? So the recent memorization is the most important, and that is fed into by the new memorization. Okay, and we'll jump into these three fortresses in a bit more detail in the next slides, inshallah. Okay, all right. The next principle we want to talk about is the importance of having a hifz partner and a teacher, right? And of course, ulama have talked about this, and I'm sure you've all heard many lectures on this. How having a teacher is so important, having the same mushaf, having the same teacher, showing up to the lessons, respecting the time of the teacher. All of these things are mentioned a lot of time, right? They've been mentioned many times, and I'm sure everyone is, used to hearing these things. I just want to briefly iterate the importance of this, right? And the reason why it's important. Hifz partner, in this journey of memorizing the Quran, as I said before as well, it's a journey towards Allah Azza wa Jal, right? So shayateen are going to come your way, right? When you have a partner, and especially a teacher on top of that, right? You have that community, the jama'ah, and then you have an accountability sort of system going on. So you remain a bit more accountable. So you show up for your lessons, and so you keep the ball rolling. Otherwise, if you just leave everything to yourself, it's very plausible that you will leave hifz every a few days a week initially, and then you will leave it off altogether, right? So it's important to have a hifz partner and a teacher from the standpoint of inshallah accountability and protection from the shayateen and so on and so forth. The other thing is that the hifz partner and a teacher, having a teacher, it makes you part of a community, right? So it gives you that motivation to show up. And so your hifz partner is also reciting to you, so you're comparing. There's a bit of a healthy competition going on between the two of you. So inshallah, this is something that you need to keep in mind. So having a hifz partner and a teacher is very important. Okay, so the teacher does not have to listen everything that you've memorized. The hifz partner can do that portion for you, unless the hifz partner is not that solid in their hifz. But the teacher is mainly to make sure that you're on track. So they test you on your portions, right? Regular tests. And the hifz partner is there to listen to everything that you've memorized, right? So, and then you divide the work amongst yourself. So when you listen to them, it helps you memorize a bit more, and when they listen to you, helps them as well, right? And so also the fact that the khatmas that you're doing, right? The khatmas, they actually feed into your hifz, right? Once you've read something so many times, even if you're not paying attention, even if you're not doing it actively, it sort of helps to know that when you've read something so many times, when you actually come to memorizing it, it's almost as if you already know it. The basic analogy that I can give, and everyone will relate to, is taking a road, for example, taking a certain path towards your school every day, for example, towards your college, or towards a destination that you take every day, for example, or to the masjid, right? After a few journeys that you've taken down that path, right, you will know that path so well that you would possibly even know where the potholes are, right? Where the road is slightly bent, or it's a bit floppy, and X, Y, and Z. So you would come to, even when you're not thinking about the road too much, because you've gone on it so many times, it strengthens that kind of the subconscious connection of the material, right? So when you actively pursue it, it's almost as if there is a subconscious level of of knowledge there already that it links to. So it's very, very helpful. These khatmas, they will actually help you memorize the Quran better, and it will become easier for you to memorize the Quran, because you would have been exposed to the Quran very, very frequently. Right, so the formula for your success in Hifz is to go slow. Spread your Hifz over 5 to 8 years. The reason why people fail is they don't have the foundation, so they don't, that's the lack of foundation is the main principle. They don't have the khatmas going on, and they don't have the qiyam. Because the foundations are not there, they lose their Hifz, or they either lose the motivation to continue their Hifz, or they lose the Quran that they've memorized already, right? So the foundations are important. Secondly, when you spread the Quran over a long period of time, you're not burdened by it, right? Because the Quran is thaqil, right? So the Quran is heavy on the mind and the heart, because it cleanses you of your sins, subhanallah. So and it's heavy on the nafs, and so on and so forth. So if you spread the Quran over a long period of time, right, it'll give you enough time to master it, right, and have a connection with it. You build a habit with the Quran, right? These two things, lack of foundations and not going slow with the Quran, this is something that really destroys talab al-ilm. They spend many years on say memorizing the Quran, or learning knowledge or whatever, and they end up with neither of the two. It's because they don't take their time, right? So the formula for your success in your Hifz journey is to go slow. Take it slowly, spread it apart, right? And the science of spaced repetition says that it is far more productive for your memory, and the memory is strengthened far more if you spread your memorization and your repetition and your testing of it, recalling of it, over a longer period of time. So and there's many studies that have been done to show that if you cram something in one session, right, versus if you do the same amount of study but you spread it over time, which one is better? It's always the case, the latter, right? Spreading the same amount of repetition or memorization over a longer period of time is always going to give you better results. Okay, it's going to become natural to you. It's going to become so much easier for you to recall the Quran and stay with the Quran and recite the Quran, inshallah. Okay, and lastly, your memory is a muscle. Your brain is a muscle, inshallah. When you use it, initially perhaps it's not so good. Perhaps you even struggle to memorize a line, right? But rest assured, if you stick to this routine, inshallah, the journey, your memory muscle will get stronger. Okay, when I first started, I was memorizing a page a day, right? And when I finished, I memorized a juz a day, right? So it's something that I can attest to. It is something definitely that I've seen personally. I've seen it with many other students, subhanallah, that subhanallah, you should definitely keep this in mind, that over time your journey will become easier, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Okay, inshallah ta'ala. Right, let's move on to how to memorize the Quran now, right? Inshallah. Let's look at the new Hifz first. So you're not going to be memorizing more than 3 to 5 lines a day. For those of you who have no experience memorizing the Quran, I recommend for the first 2 years, you don't do more than 3 lines a day. Okay? And once you become confident in memorizing 3 lines a day, in between, you shouldn't take more than 15-20 minutes to memorize 3 to 5 lines. You memorize in roughly 5-10 minutes, and then you perfect the memorization in about another 10 minutes, okay? So 15-20 minutes a day. This is for your new Hifz. So 3 to 5 lines. Start memorizing right after your session with the teacher. Now this might not be relevant to you, for some of you. For some of you, it might be relevant. So whenever you have, if you have a teacher, a Quran teacher that you go to, that you recite to, find a time where you start memorizing right after your session with them, because your mind is attuned to memorization and recalling the Quran. Likewise, if you have a Hifz partner, and we'll be pairing this, so anyone who's interested, inshallah, we'll take their names and we'll pair them up with the other students. So if whenever you have your session with the teacher, or you have a session with your Hifz partner, start memorizing your next session, next portion right after that, right? So because this is something you're going to be doing every day, inshallah, 5 days a week. So inshallah, you get used to this. Read the translation of the daily portion before you start memorization. So just so that you're familiar with the Arabic, what you're reading, what you're memorizing, inshallah. So meanings come first, inshallah. Meanings are important because they'll actually help you improve your life over time. Just rote memorization will not, reflect in the improvement of your spiritual life, inshallah. But if you memorize it with meaning, inshallah, it will actually have a very, very positive effect in your life, inshallah. And when you're reading salah, for example, you're praying your salah, reading the Quran in your salah, you will notice the difference, inshallah. Okay. Next, so if you're memorizing 3 lines, right, and it's completely fine if you're not used to memorizing at all, to even start with 1 line a day and slowly work yourself up to 3 lines and then stay there for at least a year or 2 years. Okay, it's completely fine. It's not a problem, inshallah. So say you're memorizing 3 lines, break the 3 lines into sub portions. Okay. So if there's 3 lines, break it into 6 or 7 portions. Okay, smaller portions, smaller parts. Memorize each part perfectly before moving on. You know it's perfect, as I've said, when it flows off the tongue without thinking. Okay? So, alhamdulillah, 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 alhamdulillah. You can say the portion without even thinking. Right. Once you've done that, and it flows off your tongue, the next portion. Memorize the second part as stated above. Once memorized, connect the 2 parts and read them until it flows off the tongue. Right? That's a litmus test. Follow the above stated procedure until the end of the daily portion. Once you've memorized, this is where the repetition check comes in. Once the daily portion is memorized, close the mushaf and read the portion 15 to 20 minutes or 15 to 20 times without looking. Now you've already memorized it, and according to your natural ability, you've already memorized the Quran fluently, right? That portion of the day. However, just to keep that, not to leave things to your natural ability, repeat it 15 to 20 times without looking. And every 5 times without looking, just open the mushaf quickly and have a peek in, and just to self-correct yourself, just self-check if you're making any mistakes, right? So 15, 20 times after you've already memorized something properly, and just self-checking every 5 repetitions. Right, then once you've memorized this portion, right, you're going to read only this portion, these 3 lines, or 5 lines, whatever your portion is, right, in your salah, fard and sunan, and until the next day, when you sit down to memorize the next portion, right? So you from now until the next day, next session, for you tomorrow, you have 5 salawat in the middle, right? So in each of your fard salawat and the rawatib, right, you're going to read the same portion, okay, inshallah, and nothing else. You're not going to revert back to the Qul Huwallah, or Falaq Nas. No, just your daily portion. This is how you spread your revision and the repetition over time, and you'll notice how by the next day, before you come, you won't even have to revise, right? You won't even have to revise before you recite to your teacher or your Hifz partner, inshallah. Okay, and just as a little pro tip here, never start your session by revising. Always start by checking yourself, right? So let's say you've memorized 3 lines yesterday. It's time for you to start your Hifz session today to memorize. Instead of opening the mushaf and first revising and then, right, just quickly check yourself. Okay, do I know yesterday's portion? Quickly read the lines, 3 lines, a few times, 4 or 5 times, and say to yourself, yes, okay, I know it. Good. Right. Do I know the previous juz? Start reciting. Don't wait to, this is a mistake a lot of students make, and they waste a lot of time. They they revise first by looking, and then they recite the portion to the teacher. Don't revise. Just start reciting. And wherever the mistakes occur, let your Hifz partner mark those mistakes for you and inform you after you've read or while you're reading, just so that you know where the mistakes are, and then you work on those mistakes. This will save you a lot of time, right? This is where a lot of students waste time, inshallah. So don't revise, just start reciting the next day, inshallah. And because we're keeping the portion so small and we're repeating so much, inshallah, over time you'll notice you won't have to revise, inshallah. Right? I had a student, Allah Mubarak, he was a European champion, Taekwondo champion, mashallah, and he was already also playing some semi-professional football, I think, and then he was also running a business, and he was also in A-levels. And like the way he memorized, when he memorized the Quran, with me, subhanAllah, he would tell me, Ustad, like with this method, like when I'm cooking, he had a chip shop. I think it was fish and chips, right? So he said, when I'm cooking, when I'm serving the customers, when I'm standing in the goal, when I'm in the ring, like I'm always reading the Quran. It just comes off my tongue so naturally, right? Because I'm reading it on the salawat, and I'm reading in the qiyam, and I'm doing it every day like this. So it's very, very, inshallah, helpful, inshallah, right? So don't stick to the method. Repeat the process with every daily portion, and every day you don't start with a revision, you start with testing yourself. And wherever you get stuck, open quickly, check yourself. If you don't have a Hifz partner, if you have a Hifz partner, ideally, they will test you, and they will mark your mistake or weak areas, and then you go and perfect those weak areas. It will save you a lot of time, inshallah, okay? طيب. So this is your new Hifz. This shouldn't take you more than 15-20 minutes, ideally. And if it's taking you more than 15-20 minutes, reduce your lines. Stick to 1 line or 2 lines until you can comfortably memorize 3 lines in 15-20 minutes. And then stick to that for 2 years, and then increase your portion to 5 lines. If you stick to this, inshallah, with 5 lines a day, you can memorize the Quran in 5 years. With 3 lines a day, if you stick with it, it will take you 10 years, right? So obviously, we don't want to stay 2-3 lines. We want to increase our ability. Inshallah, over time, we'll increase ourselves to 5 lines a day, inshallah. And then for the students who are right in the last 10 ajza, inshallah, we'll do half a page, right? But it's only for those who get to that stage, inshallah. So we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. So, current Hifz. This is your current juz, right? And this is roughly, because you're memorizing things slowly and you're perfecting things as you're going along, you're not going to take more than 30-40 minutes of revision every single day. So that's 45 minutes of your time combined, right? 45 to 50 minutes. Inshallah. So you must revise the juz that you're currently memorizing every day. This will make or break your Hifz. Very important. I've mentioned this before. You schedule this revision right after you've finished memorizing the daily portions. So do the 2 things at least together. Like at least the new and the current Hifz together. Right? So the recent memorization or the current memorization, you do it together. And the new memorization as well. So you can choose to revise this on your own, but we recommend reciting your revision portion to your Hifz partner or one of your parents. I did this with my mother towards the end of my Hifz because of lockdowns. I couldn't access the masjid. You should slowly build a habit of praying witr. As we've said, this is the foundation, so you can revise your current juz in your witr. Right. Let's move on to the old Hifz. Right. This is after you've done more than 1 or 2 ajza. Right, after you're doing your 2, so when you're doing your second juz and beyond, right, you are going to have 1 juz at least or more of revision, right? Ideally, for the first few years, because say you stick to 3 lines a day, you're not going to memorize more than 3 juz a year, right? So if you just do 1 juz a day, inshallah, this is going to be more than enough, right? But let's say you don't do initially a juz a day. Whatever you've memorized, just divide it over a week. Inshallah. That's one way of looking at it. Right? Ideally, this is what you should be doing. Everything you've memorized, say 5, 10, 20 ajza, right? Up to 5 ajza, you should just do half a juz a day, and that's fine. Inshallah, when you get to 10, just do 2 juz a day, and then stick to 2 juz a day. Right? When you get to 15. When you get to 15 or 20 even, then move on to 3 juz a day. Okay? But just to keep things simple, right, when you get to your 3rd juz, you should be keeping a set time for revising a juz, 1 juz from your previously memorized ajza. Ideally, this should be right after you've finished your new Hifz and current Hifz portions, or you can, put this, you can set this aside. This is something, this will come down to, this scheduling will come down to your current routines and commitments. Right, so you should revise at least one juz from your previously memorized ajza every day. You can choose to revise this on your own, but we recommend reciting your revision portion to your hifz partner or one of your parents. Now, your hifz partner might not have all that time, so ideally, new portion and the current portion with your hifz partner, and the old hifz, right? You can do this on your own or recite it to one of your parents or anyone else who can, any friend, anyone who can listen to you recite this, inshallah. But you can easily do this on your own, inshallah. This is the least of your worries. Old hifz should be the least of your worries if you really put in the effort in the first two. Okay. So if you don't have a parent who can listen to you, it's completely fine, right? Just do it on your own. Most importantly, memorizing the Quran is a spiritual matter. Allah Azza wa Jal, has taken it upon himself to preserve his speech, his kalam. So everything is going to come down to the blessing of Allah Azza wa Jal upon you, the favor of Allah Azza wa Jal upon you in this path. So if you don't make dua, well, how do you expect to accomplish anything in life, let alone memorize his speech, the pure kalam of Allah Azza wa Jal, right? We say iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'een. You alone we worship, right? Iyyaka na'bud, you alone we worship, and you alone we seek assistance from, right? Nasta'een. Now, ulama, they've mentioned that nasta'een is ibadah. Like when you seek assistance from Allah Azza wa Jal, when you seek his help, that is ibadah in itself. So the meaning was already conveyed when he said iyyaka na'bud. Why did Allah Azza wa Jal mention this separately? Right? It's because to do the first, you need his isti'ana, right? So you mentioned that specific type of ibadah separately to highlight its importance, inshallah. Okay, very important that you constantly seek Allah's help in your ibadah, and memorizing the Quran is ibadah. So make lots of dua to Allah Azza wa Jal, seek his divine assistance, and avoid sins. This book, the speech of Allah Azza wa Jal, is a light that does not shine upon transgressors. And if you fall into error, repent and follow an evil deed with a good deed, for the good deeds wipe away the sins, like water extinguishes fire. May Allah Azza wa Jal keep us steadfast upon this path. Allahumma ameen. Now the routine of it, as we've already highlighted, is you're memorizing 3 to 5 lines a day. Okay? For your recent hifz or your current hifz, you are just revising your current juz, and then your old hifz from a juz a day to everything in a week. Revise everything in a week, but this will come down to your time, how much time you have in a day, inshallah ta'ala. Okay, but ideally 1 juz a day to everything you've memorized, divide that over a week. So if you've memorized 7 juz, that's 1 juz a day. If you've memorized 10, that's already 1.5 juz a day, right? 20, that's roughly 3 juz a day, right? So this will come down to how much Quran have you memorized. But trust me, inshallah, when you memorize it in this way, inshallah, when you are doing it slowly with these kind of checks in place, you will find your revision of old hifz, right? It will come very, very natural to you, inshallah. It will not be difficult at all. Bidnillah ta'ala, okay? Right. Let's put it all into action. We're not going to end this session without some practice. Right, so these are 2 lines in front of you, okay? And I want all of us to do 2 things. Of course, we're going to memorize this right now as a group, but I want you guys to take a clock or phone, just keep an eye on the clock, and take a paper and pencil in front of you. And what I want you to do is time yourself into memorizing these 2 lines, right? This one verse, right? وَاذْكُرُوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ عَلَيْكُمْ وَمِيثَاقَهُ الَّذِي وَاثَقَكُمْ بِهِ إِذْ قُلْتُمْ سَمِعْنَا وَأَطَعْنَا وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ إِنَّ اللَّهَ عَلِيمٌ بِذَاتِ الصُّدُورِ. 2 lines. I want you all to memorize this right now. Time yourself into how long it takes you to get to the stage where the 2 lines flow off your tongue, where you don't have to think. Ideally, as I said, break this down into smaller portions. What you can do is you can say وَاذْكُرُوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ عَلَيْكُمْ 1, وَمِيثَاقَهُ الَّذِي وَاثَقَكُمْ بِهِ إِذْ, that's 2, إِذْ قُلْتُمْ سَمِعْنَا وَأَطَعْنَا, and then وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ إِنَّ اللَّهَ عَلِيمٌ بِذَاتِ الصُّدُورِ. So divide into 4 to 5 portions as you see fit for yourself, inshallah. And I'll give you 5 minutes, and I'll check on you of how many of you have already memorized it in 5 minutes, and then we'll come back in the next five after the 10 minutes and see how many of you have memorized, inshallah. طيب, so let's start the timer, right? It's just 1 second. Right, the 5-minute timer starts now. So بإذن الله, go ahead, inshallah. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Right. Right, the time is up now. Right, let's have your feedback now. How many of you have memorized the 2 lines? Has anyone memorized the 2 lines? Right. Keep going then. Keep going for a few more minutes until you've nailed it. Let's see how long it takes you. That'll be your personal time, right? That's what your current abilities are with Hifz, okay? Inshallah. Right, so quickly, I want everyone to quickly, inshallah, give me your feedback, how long it took you to memorize these 2 lines. I want everyone to mention their time, their personal best time. قال الله تعالى سبحانه ولقد يسرنا القرآن للذكر فهل من مدكر. فذكر القرآن هذا سهل من عدة وجوه. Memorizing the Quran is easy from many angles. One of them is what you guys have just mentioned. If you know some words, because the Quran is Sab'ul Mathani, it repeats itself so much. The words repeat, right? So if you've memorized a portion, it definitely helps with memorizing the next because the words repeat. Right, quickly, inshallah, before we take a break, I want you guys to give me your feedbacks. Do you have your personal best time? How long did it take you to get to how much have you memorized? Firstly, I think most of you have memorized, right? Most of you have memorized the 2 lines. Where do you stand with your Hifz at the moment? How many minutes it took you to fluency? طيب, alhamdulillah. Right, so I'm waiting on your responses from all of you, inshallah. But in the meantime, we'll end this session with a few comments. So whatever time you've taken to memorize these 2 lines, divide that by 2 to know how long it takes you to memorize 1 line. Right, that will be the time that you require as a person to memorize 1 line. Right, and just multiply that with 3, so you'll know how much it's going to take you initially to memorize 3 lines. And if it's more than 20 minutes, then cut down on your portion. Just memorize 1 line or 1.5 or 2 lines, inshallah, to begin with. Okay, and this is how you, inshallah, continue on this journey, right? 2 lines a day, 3 lines a day, and every day, right? There's no break, there's no holiday in the Quran. You just do it every single day, inshallah. Okay, and you keep going with it, and make sure to revise your portion in your salawat, fard and sunan, rawatib, and then your current juz in your witr, and you show up for your meeting with your Hifz partner, and you keep going. And once a week we'll have a weekly test halaqa, inshallah, together, and I'll be testing you guys on your Hifz. طيب, that's as far as this session is concerned.